You got Mag and Mac here on Birds 365, and we welcome in our next guest from InsideTheBirds.com, the podcast, Pro Football Network, SiriusXM's NFL Network. We'll find out if there's any truth to the rumor that he's going to be doing Zagat ratings for restaurants all the way up and down the East Coast. Our buddy Adam Caplan jumps in here on Birds 365. Staying busy, huh, Mr. Caplan?
Yeah, good to see you guys. Yeah, for sure. Just in the midst of booking my training camp tour, which is
how many you got this year, Adam?
John, I'm not done yet, John, but right now I'm up to 14. I'm hoping to get to 20. It's really difficult. It's a tedious process. It's like a puzzle. Yeah. And it takes me like a week to get it done because the thing is, and now I think there's like 22 or 24, probably like 22 teams working with each other. I like to go to these joint practices.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there's so many of them doing it, teams working on the same day, so I got to pick and choose.
Yeah, and the Eagles don't have teams like the Eagles because they don't practice much. So you got, it's not like the old days when you knew, everybody's going to be practicing. You got to kind of weigh it as far as the scaled back work and all that kind of stuff. But it's good to stay busy. It's good to see you.
See you.
I guess we'll start with the running backs because that was like, boy, man, they got upset yesterday. Everybody was out there. Austin Eckler, Christian McCaffrey. They were all coming together. The devaluation of this position is something, Adam. But look, it's supply and demand. We're not, a lot of these guys, Eckler especially, was blaming the media. No GMs are listening to us. And if they are, they better not. So, we're not doing it.
Yeah, Eckler's a great player. It's a shame. All they did is they added some incentive to his deal. He's way better than his contract would stipulate. He's on the final year of his deal. But getting back to what happened yesterday, look, all three of the guys who didn't get extended off the tag that was expected. I didn't expect any of those guys to get a deal because Pollard's coming off a major injury. They don't quite know exactly how many carries he could handle. In fact, he only had 4 games of over 15 carries last season. Really a good player, though, had a breakout season. Super explosive. The analytical data on him is tremendous. But again, how many carries could he handle? You look at Josh Jacobs, before last season, had a pretty decent injury history. He was on the injury report a lot last season, but played through all the games, all the injuries. In fact, he played a full season. So that was a good story. But I never got the sense that the Raiders were serious about extending his deal. And you saw what Derrick Henry said, and a bunch of veteran running backs said. Look, it's a passing league. Teams want to come out more than often than not throwing the ball, not running it, and then run to win. And that's just the way it is. You talked about the de-evaluation of the running back position. That's been steady, other than Christian McCaffrey, who got an outlier deal, $16.5 million average. That's a legit $16.5 million. The guarantee at signing was phenomenal. They actually did it a couple years early. From what I understand, ownership got involved with that one. And we see this happen sometimes when owners get involved. They could make sure a deal gets done. But the bottom line is no one's doing that anywhere close to that deal. That's just the way it is.
Yeah. Let me follow up on something you mentioned there, the injury report. Have you watched Quarterback on Netflix?
I haven't, but I'm going to, at some point,
Okay, because when you do, you'll see, why are we reading the injury report? Because guys are more injured than they're actually reporting. You're seeing it with your own 2 eyes. How much do you take a week in, a week out on the injury report? Are there teams where you put more into evaluating, less into evaluating because they are known to not give up information and or cover up? I know that it's something that those who want to wager on the game on Sunday want to have that kind of information. Should we just throw up our hands and go, hey, if he shows up and plays, he shows up and plays? Or is this something the NFL has to be a little bit more dedicated to?
Well, Jody, if you go back to the old injury report, they would list Friday whether the guy was out, like you would know. Well, about 9 or 10 years ago, they changed the injury report to say limited or full. But limited, what does that mean? It's less than the normal repetitions at practice? Well, that could mean if you took 2 less, that means you're limited.
You're limited, yep.
Yeah, I hate that. One of the many things I've done over the years, I used to be a partner in the website called footballinjuries.com.
Yeah.
And now this is before the internet. We sold our company in 2008, but this is when it really made it difficult to get injury information. It it was so different then, guys, to get injury information because you had to go to the team.
Right.
Okay, what did this guy really do today, Joe? To answer your question, you can't tell by these injury reports.
Yeah.
They're somewhat useless. Now, I think you tell me because you saw it. Did Kirk Cousins reveal a rib injury or something like that?
Yeah, I'm telling you, Adam. He was not healthy for the majority of the year, and to my knowledge, he was never on the injury report. I don't remember him ever showing up on the injury report as limited. Now, Mike Florio brought up a good point and saying, you got guys getting suspended, Jameson Williams. What if you have inside info? Yeah, Kirk Cousins ain't healthy. He's got a broken rib, whatever it was. It wasn't good. You watch the show and you'll see it and what he did to get ready each and every week. If you're in the building, you know it. If you're working for the team, maybe you walk off the parking lot. If you're smart and you understand the GPS tracking on your phone, you put a little on the opposition team, whatever. There's a Pandora's box there for the NFL when it comes to those injury reports. And nobody knows that better than you because, as you mentioned, with footballinjuries.com, you used to do it all the time.
Yeah, in fact,
inside info is real.
John, here's a funny story. So Belichick got nailed for, this is early 2000s, and so did Mike Shanahan, and Shanahan did the same thing. So the league fined the Patriots. I think it was a fine. This is maybe 2 decades ago or whatever it was when first couple years with Belichick. So he listed like every player with a hangnail.
Loved it. I love when Belichick did that.
Yeah. And then so did Mike Shanahan. Shanahan did it.
Yeah.
I think with Denver, but you're right. I'm glad you brought this up because I just wish the league would do a better job. I don't know whose idea was it go from the old injury report. In fact, John, here's another one for you. I know you've been covering the league a long time, and I'm sure Jody knows this. Do you know, most fans don't know this, that back in the early 2000s, you would have to list your inactives on Friday. True story.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Which was absurd. Yeah.
I don't remember that.
In fact, our website, which a lot of gamblers subscribe to, we would make sure we would get them before the information got out, or whatever the case may be. We would try. It was going to get out anyway, so it wasn't really inside information. We try to get it first. But the bottom line was the league could continue to change it, but this has been static. They've kept this limited, and remember they don't use probable anymore. That's another.
No. Yeah.
Probable, definite. Yeah, the reporting of the injuries has changed much over the year, and there's still some loopholes in there to be had. All right, Adam, we haven't had you on in a while. Birds related, Eagles related. They're going to open up camp on Tuesday. The moves that Howie Roseman made during this offseason, they lost a lot of defensive free agents. They've got to try and replace them. Some they're going to do through the draft. Some they signed some free agents. Some guys who didn't get a chance to play are going to get a chance to play a lot this year. Nakobe Dean. Is this team on paper, and we know how much paper counts as soon as the season starts, but that's all we got right now. Is this team on paper as good as the one last year that went to the Super Bowl?
Probably not, because they're down a minimum of 7 starters, 2 on offense, 5 on defense. You don't have Hargrave. We could complain about his effort against the run. It wasn't that he was not good against the run. It was the effort against the run, which we were told that the technique was not very good. But he's still a supreme pass rusher, so you don't have that. You have 2 new inside backers. You have 2 new safeties. You have a right guard job that's open. People could say, "Oh, it's only one position. It's a guard," but you don't have any experience there. The lack of depth, the offensive line, I think, is a problem. Now, are they the best in the NFC East? Yes, no question. Are they one of the best teams in the NFL? Yes. But to answer your question, move this forward, based on the roster, no, it's not as good.
I'm going to talk about the coaching staff because you and Jeff are well-versed InsideTheBirds.com, the podcast with coaching moves around the league. I thought it was interesting, Adam. Obviously, you lose your coordinators. It's not the Eagles' fault. They have success. They got pilfered. They make the decision. Brian Johnson on offense gets elevated. Sean Desai, they go outside the building. But they have this extra layer. And I think everybody's kind of looking at it and saying, well, most people are ignoring it. And maybe it raised an antenna for me. You have Marcus Brady, senior offensive assistant. He was here as a consultant last year. Now he's part of the staff. Matt Patricia's senior defensive assistant. That layer did not exist when Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon were here. Is that an indication that Nick Sirianni's trying to replace him with two people? What are your intel? Why are Marcus Brady and Matt Patricia here?
Well, Marcus Brady, obviously from the Colts, so the two know each other. So he brought him in, and it was weird how they brought him in. Remember, he had a different title last year.
Yeah, it was a consultant, but he was a consultant for the defense.
Exactly, that was really strange. Yeah, that was strange. Which sometimes because you want to know what the offense is trying to do to your defense, I get that. I certainly get that. Look, there were a couple things here when you look at this offensive staff. So Steichen obviously called the plays, but I know in our reporting, Kevin Patullo is sort of like the secret sauce for their offense. It's kind of like DeFilippo when John ran I think it was their red zone offense. He was the guy that he was sort of the quarterback developer, but he had a heavy say in the way the offense looked like. Well, Patullo is Sirianni's right-hand man in terms of game planning during the week. So what we're told, very heavy in there, but you need other voices. So you lose a major voice in Steichen, and you add two instead of one. It's just the only thing you worry about. I think this happened after Reich and DeFilippo left, John. And this may be where you're going. This is certainly where I'm going to go. You do worry sometimes when there are too many voices in a young quarterback's head, because you don't want that. I think one of the various reasons why Wentz regressed, just too many voices in his head. You want to kind of clean it up. You really only want to have one voice in the quarterback room. That's typically the way it's done in the best places. But now I get it. Game planning, yes, you're going to have 3 or 4 guys doing it. It's a fair point. I don't really worry about that. I think it's more Brian Johnson.
I worry about it from this perspective, Adam.
Yeah.
Marcus is a former offensive coordinator in this league. Brian Johnson is a first-time coordinator at the pro level. If he starts to struggle early, you got Marcus Brady on his shoulder. Even more so defensively, you got Matt Patricia on Sean Desai's shoulder, and that's a big name in this league. I don't know. I mean, you have young, inexperienced coordinators, and you have guys in that second level that have more experience at those particular jobs. I just think it's a curious way to approach it, to have that sort of – you're inviting second guessing. Is what I'm saying. If you start to struggle,
I'm going to give you another layer to this. So Alex Tanney, we all know the Eagles are very high on him. Well, Brian Johnson had a pretty big voice in the offense. Alex Tanney's a young guy. In fact, I just remember him retiring not too long ago.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know how much involvement he'll have in the game planning. And obviously he has to run the quarterback room. That's his job. But in terms of game planning, I don't know how much of a role he's going to have. So you're the quarterback coach now is the OC, and now the new quarterback's coach just retired recently, not 3-4 years ago. So we'll see. I don't think it's the big deal as you're making it. It could be if it doesn't work, but that goes for any coach. I mean, I've been through this thing for 25 years. I know when there are other coaches on the team staff, things aren't going well. You do wonder, will this guy get involved and that guy get involved? And then, of course, you have Sirianni as the overseer, as a CEO head coach. I mean, he obviously, if he feels things are not going right, he would have to get involved. But from what I've heard is, he's heavily involved in the game planning, but he's been, I don't want to say hands off, but he has not been overbearing from what I'm told.
All right. Since you mentioned his name, I want to follow up with him. I know it's kind of threading a needle here. You're going to need a team that has a quarterback get hurt, and as a young quarterback, they just don't think they can turn it over to. Carson Wentz going to get signed this year? Or have we seen the last of Carson Wentz in the National Football League?
He'll be with the team, but he's a backup. I mean, his mechanics were just eroded so greatly. In fact, the term is overstride. He has this really bad issue. He if you're seeing us on YouTube here, he's got his feet too spread apart, and when he throws, he strides too much, and it causes the ball to sail. That is, for some reason, I mean, I know coaches work with him, but that's bad. He regressed so significantly. I know he's been working with certain people, in the offseason, but if he wants to be a backup, that's what he's going to be. To answer your question, I do expect him to be with the team, but who the heck knows when it could happen? And it's just a study in what happens when you lose your way, with particularly with mechanics and confidence. So, boy, it was hard to watch with Washington, where Greg Cosell told us, he said his tape with the Colts is pretty good. Now, there was a leadership issue there. Am I reporting what happened there? It was clear the owner made the call. But,
yes, he did. He wasn't shy about it.
No. In fact, I remember hearing at the combine prior to them making a decision on him that it's not going to be good. It's not going to end well. And it didn't for Carson. And obviously he regressed significantly last season and then he has to move on. But then Washington is going with Sam Howell as a 5th-round pick.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it was a coincidence that Carson went out to work with Tom House and Adam Dedew and before the Super Bowl season, and he goes on that run, and then he stopped going out there. I don't understand it, and the mechanics started to regress. Strange situation with Carson Wentz, but NFC as a whole, Adam, we've been talking about this. Looks like the Eagles, to me, 49ers, and we don't know the quarterback situation, Cowboys, and then you have a drop-off. Jody's a little bit different. He thinks the drop-off comes after the 49ers. This is a weak conference on paper.
It is.
Is there anybody ready to make a leap up where we say they're in the conversation? Because I think the Eagles have a chance. I think the Eagles are going to struggle a little bit. You mentioned the 7 starters. We mentioned the coaches. There's going to be some hiccups. But if they were in the AFC, that might cost them. I think they're going to have time to get their footing in the NFC and then sort of take off in the second half of the season. Is there anybody out there that you think might be ready to make a leap up and we start talking about as a legit contender?
Yeah, and I know there's some buzz with this team I'm about to mention, but the Lions are my breakout team this season. I've been on them since, in fact, they should have been in the playoffs. I don't know if you're aware of this. Week 18, they go into Green Bay and they beat Green Bay. And then the Rams completely outplayed the Seahawks. And then there were so many bad calls in that game, or the Rams would have won. I watched every play of that game.
Really?
Yeah, and I just remember, this is one of the worst officiated games I've ever seen. There had to be 3 or 4 really bad calls. It's kind of like if you watch the Phillies-Padres series, one of the worst ball strike calls for both teams. It was embarrassing. Well, this Rams-Seahawks game, so I know it's an innocuous game, but it meant a lot to the Lions.
Yeah, it did.
And it was bad. I mean, it was bad, and they should have gotten in. The Seahawks should have not. So the only problem with the Lions is with Jameson Williams' 6-game suspension, they're very light at receiver, but they've added a lot of defensive help, and they were able to retain Ben Johnson. I love him. He had a very good chance to be the Panthers head coach, but he made it a personal decision, as I was told then. That in fact, the Panthers, I'm told, were going to pair him up with Brian Johnson was going to be his OC. At least they wanted to had he got the job. But the Eagles kind of got wind of everything, and they promoted him pretty quickly.
All right, I'll give you my reasoning why I think the drop-off is between 2 and 3 rather than 3 and 4 in the NFC. Here is my big question about the Dallas Cowboys. Need your opinion on it, Adam.
Sure.
Scale of 0 to 10. 10 being as good as it gets in the league, 0 being, why the hell is he doing this? What kind of play call do you think Mike McCarthy is going to be for the Cowboys?
Mike wanted, it's interesting. When McCarthy went in there, he was told he would not be calling, more or less was told that Kellen Moore is going to call the plays. That's come from ownership. So Mike always wanted to do it, and he had to kind of check his ego. And then he made a decision. He wants to run his West Coast scheme. It's completely different from the Kellen Moore scheme, which is more the Zampese scheme. And it won't be a spread. It's going to be more traditional, a lot more, as I'm told, committed to the run game, though. I don't think he could run the ball a lot with Pollard. He's more of an explosive back. But with Gallup healthy, with Brandon Cooks in there, they need another receiver badly. They're super gifted. They have a very good offensive line. This is going to be a good team. But here's another one for you. How much of an input will Brian Schottenheimer get in this offense as the OC? McCarthy's going to call the plays. Schottenheimer became a very aggressive play caller in 2020. Russell Wilson was headed for 56 passing touchdowns until Pete Carroll put the kibosh on the pass game. So when you really look at this situation, it's going to look different, to answer your question, more conservative, but they're very, very talented. They're right up there. You talked about the NFC guys. It's the Eagles. It's the Niners on Purdy. They insist he'll be ready for week 1, but Purdy needs the work. It's my Lions. It's obviously the Cowboys are gifted. And I believe the Vikings, who are 13-4 by almost a miracle, are going to take a big step back.
Oh yeah. Well, one of the things, and it's typical. Jody and I talk about it all the time. I'm not a fan. Like, you're right. That 13 was an anomaly, but they won 13 games, and they won 13 games with one of the worst defenses I've ever seen. So maybe they win. Now they have Brian Flores. Maybe they don't win with the explosive plays, and they don't win all the close games. But maybe they're middle of the road defensively, and they could win that way. But they have a young GM, and I got a problem with these young GMs who say, all right, we're not in a position to win a title, so we're going to move on, whether it's Dalvin Cook, Zadarius Smith, on and on. It's almost like they're rebuilding after a 13-win season. I can't get behind that. I get it. They were a shaky 13, but they won 13 games. They got a lot of good players.
John, they set an NFL record for, I think, most
8-0.
Yeah,
and then they lost in the playoffs.
Yeah, and look, they got exposed by the Giants. It was like you can't keep. It's like pulling games off the bottom of the ninth. You set a record of coming back in the bottom of the ninth. That's just not going to last. It's just not realistic. Now, you mentioned Brian Flores. He doesn't run Fangio. He runs a New England scheme.
Yeah,
Donatel was running Fangio, and they were terrible in the secondary. In fact, they're really not much better. Byron Murphy is a good number 2 corner. Harrison Smith is an aging safety. Now, you're right. Flores will do a better job, but they're just not talented enough. To me, they're in the middle. They're a middling team, which the record did not indicate really who they were.
All right, sounds to me like you don't like the Seattle Seahawks as much as I.
Not at all. Now, I'll say this, Jody. They improved defensively in terms of their secondary. Devin Witherspoon. They needed help at corner. They got it. They're going to get Jamal Adams back from a severe knee injury. They're very weak up the middle in terms of defensive line. But overall, they could score.
They did have a pretty good middle linebacker. I know he's a little long in the
Bobby's good, but I'm talking about
forever.
Right, I'm talking about D tackle. They're really weak there. So yeah, they'll be good, but I don't see them making the playoffs. Geno Smith, it's one of the big surprises I can remember. I was talking to a GM at the combine. I said, were you guys in on Geno Smith? He goes, dude, if we knew he was going to be this good, we would have signed him. I was like, okay. Because nobody knew it. I mean, he was the only reason why they brought him back, the players adore him. Coaches do as well. They didn't expect anything from him. They thought Drew Lock would win the job.
Yeah.
Understood. Yeah. But I'm giving Geno props. I've been an anti-Geno guy forever. But the season he had last year, I think he can reproduce it, and they've got the wide receivers. They've got two good, not one good running back, two good running backs. Because I'm a big Charbonnet fan, who I was kind of hoping the Eagles could latch on to in the second round. He was gone by the time they picked there. I think the Seahawks are a playoff team again. I think they might be the third best team in the NFC.
At Caplan NFL, locally InsideTheBirds.com. He and Jeff Mosher, Andrew DiCecco, friend of the show, will mention as well. Those guys do a tremendous job covering the Eagles nationally. You can find them everywhere now at Pro Football Network, Sirius XM, NFL, Fox Sports Radio. The great Adam Caplan. Last one for me. We talked about it NFC side, Adam. AFC side. So much deeper. Is there a surprise team? Is there one team that nobody thinks about? Maybe Cleveland. We were just talking about, nobody talks about Cleveland. We were talking about how good Amari Cooper was, and the Cowboys couldn't replace him. If Deshaun Watson turns back to what he was in the latter stages of Houston before all the trouble, you got Myles Garrett on defense. They got a lot of talent. Is there any of the sort of a team like that can come out and say, all right, they're going to be with the Bills and the Chiefs and the Bengals?
Well, that from a talent standpoint, look what they added. Elijah Moore, who I talked to the Browns last week. They're so excited about. He was dominant in OTAs. I understand you can't hit anyone, but he's going to have a significant role. They brought in Zadarius Smith from the Vikings. That's a significant move. They need to get a little bit healthier on defense. They did. They have good young depth. No, you're right, John. In fact, if I had to pick, we don't make our picks until late August, but I would probably pick them as the seventh team to make it obviously the last wild card. And don't forget, they'll be here in NovaCare. Those practice
Schwartz and Jim Schwartz.
Yeah, Schwartz. And by the way, who's also going to be there? Schwartz hired Jim Washburn as a consultant. So wide 9 lives, man. And Myles Garrett, if you do props, if you do the what I call fantasy props, take the over Myles Garrett sacks because in the wide 9.
By the way, I forgot Za'Darius is there. They got Myles Garrett and Za'Darius Smith. They're going to be able to rush the passer in Cleveland with Jim Schwartz, by the way. So, I mean, Jim is going to, it's going to be wide 9 left and right, man. They're coming after you.
All right, last one for me, Adam. And the two teams are tied together because of what happened last year. They're going to take different paths to potential postseason this year in the AFC. But Chargers and Jaguars. Last year in the playoffs, first round, Chargers up 27-0 and coughed it up. The Jaguars, of course, win, and Doug Peterson gets another playoff win. No great surprise there. We know what Doug P can do in the postseason. Coming into the season, and then at the end of the season, when you evaluate one against the other, who's going to have the better year, Justin Herbert or Trevor Lawrence?
I'm going to say Justin Herbert. The scheme that they were running before under Joe Lombardi did not feature a lot of downfield throwing, a lot of checkdowns, a lot of intermediate throws. Kellen Moore runs more of a spread, and they drafted Quentin Johnston in the first round, a receiver out of TCU. So they're legit 4 deep at receiver. Now the Jaguars, folks, I love the futures numbers, the over unders. Boy, I missed on that one. I picked under the 5.5 last year. I'll admit it. I got 2 on. I did pretty well with them last year, but I missed badly on Denver and Jacksonville.
Yeah. Oh, you had Denver over?
Yeah, I did.
So did I. I thought Russell was going to have a nice year.
So did I. Look, coaching matters. Doug did a phenomenal job. Press Taylor revived his career. They ran him out of town here in Philly, but give the kid credit. He did a good job.
Nathaniel Hackett did not do a good job.
No, in fact, he ran Camp Cupcake and he got canned. So he's now with the Jets. In fact, I will probably see the Jets more than any team, maybe more the Eagles this summer. I think I'm seeing them 4 times. But so to answer your question, I'm going to pick the Jaguars. First of all, Cupcake division. I get people now are on the Titans to make the playoffs as a wild card. It's not going to happen. The Jaguars are clearly the favorite there. They're my number 1 team to win their division.
That's what I said that yesterday, Adam.
I said
if you tell me who was the most definitive division winner, I'm picking Jacksonville. Nobody else is going to push Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence, and that's a bad division. Even Kansas City, Jody brought up Kansas City. Hey, the Chargers, if Justin Herbert gets going, they can do some damage, especially off. I'm not a big Brandon Staley guy, but they're closer to the Chiefs than anybody is to the Jags. That's how bad that division looks.
Well, the Chargers guys defensively, they really struggled on the back end. They missed on J.C. Jackson, who unfortunately tore a patella, but before the injury, he was not playing well at $18 million a year. They're a team you just don't. They're one of those confounding teams. You just don't quite understand why they can't go over the hump. So the pressure will be on that team. But I like the Jaguars better. You're right, Jody. The AFC is way better. Way better. Look, they have some bottom feeders, but if you look at the AFC East, the Patriots are going to bounce back. We know that 2 teams made it from the division. The Jets now will push the Bills. Would it shock any of you if the Jets beat the Bills for that division?
No.
I'm
the biggest Aaron Rodgers guy in the world. He'll save Nathaniel Hackett's career because he's going to run that offense from the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, they're going to run their old school Packers scheme. That's why they did this. And it's going to be a fun year, though, because there's always mystery. You try to figure out who those surprise teams are. The Lions, for me, I don't have one yet. In the AFC, I don't know. I don't know where you guys are at with it. I'm having trouble finding that team.
I don't even know you can call a Jets a surprise team.
No, not them.
I've only been a Jet fan for 50 years, and they've been a surprise team every year. Oh, except this one, because they got Aaron Rodgers.
That's right.
And yes, I'm on record. Made my wagers already. Super Bowl matchup, all green. Eagles against Jets.
Oh my goodness.
That's what I got 80-1 if the Eagles beat the Jets, 90-1 if the Jets beat the Eagles in the final game of the
Jody versus Howie. Can you imagine that?
Adam Caplan, we love it whenever you come on. Thank you very much for doing it.
Thanks, Adam.
We know you're going to be on the road for all of August with your extensive road camp trip. So we won't be reaching out then. But once the season gets underway, we're going to get you on.
Thanks.
My pleasure. Adam Caplan from Pro Football Network, InsideTheBirds.com, and podcast and SiriusXM's NFL Network. Johnny Mac coming back. We still got a couple minutes left here on Birds 365 to put a bow on this show.